Jamal was a 17-year-old boy who lived in a small, quiet neighborhood. The kind of neighborhood where most people knew each other, but didn't talk much beyond a simple hello or wave from a distance. Jamal was tall for his age and always carried a calm smile on his face. He was a good student, respectful to everyone, and had a heart full of kindness. His mother, a nurse who worked hard every day, had raised him well. She often told him, "Kindness is never wasted, no matter what happens." Jamal believed in those words. One afternoon, after finishing his homework, Jamal decided to go to the nearby corner store to buy some snacks for his little brother. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with soft orange and pink colors. The streets were quiet, and a gentle breeze made the leaves on the trees rustle softly. Jamal walked with his hands in his pockets, thinking about the math test he had tomorrow. He hoped it wouldn't be too hard. As Jamal turned a corner, he noticed something unusual. At the end of the block, in front of a small white house, an elderly woman was standing on a ladder. She looked worried and a bit tired. Jamal could see her struggling to fix the porch light. The ladder was old and shaky, and every time she moved it seemed like it might fall. Jamal stopped walking. He could see the woman trying to screw in the light bulb, but it just wouldn't stay in place. She wiped sweat from her forehead and looked around, maybe hoping for someone to help her. Without thinking twice, Jamal took a few steps forward. He always believed in helping others, especially elderly people. He called out gently, "Excuse me, ma'am, can I help you with that?" The woman looked down, surprised. She had a stern face with wrinkles that told stories of many years lived. Her eyes softened when she saw Jamal's friendly smile. "Oh, thank you, young man," she said with a quiet voice. "This ladder is old, and the light bulb just won't fit properly. I've tried everything." Jamal smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." He carefully moved the ladder to a safer spot, then climbed up. His hands were steady and sure. He took the light bulb from her and checked it closely. It looked like the bulb was fine, but the socket where it went seemed a little damaged. Jamal knew a bit about fixing things because his father used to teach him simple repairs when he was younger. He gently cleaned the socket with a small cloth he took out of his pocket and screwed the bulb back in. This time it fit perfectly. He flicked the switch on the wall, and the light glowed warmly, casting a soft yellow glow on the porch. The old woman clapped her hands softly, pleased. Thank you so much," she said. "You are a very kind boy. It's rare to find help like this these days." Jamal climbed down the ladder and felt proud. Helping someone was easy, and it made him feel good inside. "It's no problem, ma'am. I'm happy to help," he replied. The woman introduced herself as Mrs. Cranston. She told Jamal she had lived in the neighborhood for more than 50 years. She talked about how the neighborhood had changed a lot over time, with new families coming and going. Jamal listened politely, happy to chat a little. As Jamal started to walk away, Mrs. Cranston called him back. "You know, young man, not many people would stop to help these days, especially boys your age. You have a good heart." Jamal smiled shyly. He didn't expect a compliment but felt warm inside. He waved goodbye and walked down the street, his heart light. Helping Mrs. Cranston was a small thing, but it made the whole day better. Jamal thought about his mother's words again. Kindness is never wasted. He believed that if everyone helped each other a little, the world would be a better place. That evening, Jamal told his mother about the day. She smiled and hugged him. "You did a good thing today," she said. "Never stop being kind, even if the world doesn't always appreciate it." Jamal went to bed that night feeling happy. He knew that one small act of kindness could mean a lot, even if it was just fixing a light for an old lady. What Jamal didn't know was that this simple moment would change everything in ways he could never imagine. The morning after Jamal helped Mrs. Cranston fix her porch light began like any other day. The sun had just started to rise, casting a soft golden glow over the quiet neighborhood. Jamal woke up feeling ready for school. He got dressed quickly, ate a simple breakfast with his mother, and grabbed his backpack. His mother reminded him to be careful on the way, as she always did. Jamal stepped outside and locked the door behind him. The fresh morning air felt nice on his face. Birds chirped, and a few neighbors were already outside, watering plants or taking their morning walks. Jamal waved to some of them as he started walking down the sidewalk toward the bus stop. But before he had taken more than a few steps, he noticed something unusual. Two police officers were walking toward him from the end of the street. One was a tall man with a serious expression, and the other was shorter, looking at Jamal with careful eyes. Both wore dark blue uniforms and badges that glinted in the sunlight. Jamal's heart beat a little faster. He had never had much contact with the police before, except for the occasional officer waving during community events. As they approached, one of the officers stopped and said, "Are you Jamal Williams?" Jamal nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, that's me." The taller officer continued, "We need to ask you some questions about something that happened yesterday." Jamal was confused. "Okay, what is it about?" The shorter officer looked at Jamal with a serious face. "We received a report that someone tried to enter a woman's house without permission. The woman is Mrs. Cranston, on Elm Street." Jamal's eyes widened. "No, that's not true. I didn't try to enter her house. I just helped her fix the light on her porch. She asked me to help." The officers exchanged glances but continued to question him. Jamal explained everything he remembered. The broken light bulb, Mrs. Cranston struggling on the ladder, how he offered to help, fixed the light, and then left. Despite his explanation, the officers looked skeptical. One of them asked if Jamal had any proof of what he said. Jamal shook his head, feeling more confused and nervous. He wished he could show them the porch light glowing warmly as a sign that he had done something good, but there was no way to prove it. Jamal's mother came out of the house when she heard the officers talking. She looked worried and asked, "What is going on?" The officers explained the situation to her and said they needed to verify Jamal's story. Mrs. Williams, Jamal's mother, stood firmly beside her son. "He was only helping Mrs. Cranston. I trust him. He wouldn't do anything wrong." Despite their belief in Jamal, the police officers said they had to take the complaint seriously. They warned Jamal to stay out of trouble and reminded him about the importance of respecting others' property. They said they wouldn't arrest him but wanted to document the complaint. Jamal felt a mix of shock, embarrassment, and sadness. The same people he had trusted, the officers and Mrs. Cranston, were now doubting him. He couldn't understand why helping someone would lead to such suspicion. He looked at his mother, who gave him a reassuring nod, but clearly was upset. After the officers left, Jamal stood silently on the porch. He felt the weight of the day settling on his shoulders. His simple act of kindness was now turning into something difficult and painful. At school, Jamal found it hard to focus. His friends noticed he was quiet and asked what was wrong. When he told them what happened, some were shocked. Others seemed less surprised. One friend said, "It's just the way things are sometimes. People see you one way before they see the real you." Jamal didn't want to believe that, but he couldn't ignore the feelings building inside him. He felt angry at the unfairness, but also scared about what might happen next. The news started to spread through the neighborhood and even beyond. Someone had called a local newspaper, and reporters came knocking. A few days later, Jamal saw a story on the evening news about a teen accused of suspicious behavior while helping an elderly woman. The story was short, but planted doubt in many minds. Jamal's family kept the story private at first, trying to protect him. But social media changed everything. Jamal's cousin posted about what really happened, defending Jamal and telling the true story of the light bulb. The post quickly gained attention. People shared their opinions, some supporting Jamal, others agreeing with Mrs. Cranston's fears. The attention made Jamal feel even more confused. He had only wanted to help, But now he was in the middle of a public debate about trust and fear. Some comments were kind and encouraging, but others were hurtful and unfair. Jamal read that some people saw him as a threat simply because of the color of his skin. Mrs. Cranston, the elderly woman Jamal helped, was also affected. She gave an interview to a local reporter explaining her side. She said she was scared and didn't know what Jamal's intentions were. She said she felt uneasy afterward and called the police because she wanted to be safe in her own home. Many people in the community were divided. Some sympathized with Mrs. Cranston, understanding that older people can sometimes feel vulnerable. Others were upset that Jamal's kindness was met with suspicion and police involvement. At school, Jamal's teachers and principal talked about the incident. Some students whispered behind his back, while others offered quiet support. Jamal started to feel different in ways he never had before. He had always been proud of helping others, but now he wondered if being kind was worth the pain it brought. At home, Jamal and his mother talked late into the night. She reminded him that unfairness exists, but that he must keep being true to himself. "You can't control what others think, Jamal," she said gently, "but you can control how you act." Jamal wanted to believe her, but the pain was deep. He felt like he had lost a little piece of his innocence. The world he had trusted seemed more complicated and harsher than before. Despite everything, Jamal refused to give up. He kept going to school, kept helping where he could, and tried to stay strong. But the experience left a mark on him, a reminder that sometimes kindness is met with fear, and that fear can come from places we least expect. As the days passed, Jamal watched how people talked about him and Mrs. Cranston. He wondered if things would ever go back to how they were. He hoped for a chance to show everyone the real truth about who he was and about how one simple act of kindness could be misunderstood. After the police visited Jamal and the story about the porch light incident started to spread, the whole neighborhood began to buzz with talk. What had been a quiet, peaceful community now felt tense and uneasy. Jamal's story was no longer just about a boy helping an old woman. It had grown into something much bigger. People were talking about trust, fear, and how sometimes even small acts of kindness could be misunderstood because of deeper issues. Jamal's friends at school were some of the first to hear about what had happened. Some of them were shocked, others angry, and a few were unsure about what to think. Jamal's best friend Marcus came up to him one day during lunch. Marcus looked serious and said, "Man, I can't believe they treated you like that. You were just helping someone." Jamal nodded quietly. "I don't get it either. I was only trying to be kind." Marcus sat down next to him. "You know, sometimes people see us in a certain way before they even get to know us. It's not fair, but it's real." Jamal didn't want to believe it. He wanted to think that kindness was enough to break down walls between people, but now he was starting to understand that things were more complicated. Still, he was grateful to have friends who stood by him. At school, the teachers and principal were aware of the situation. Some teachers talked to Jamal privately, encouraging him to keep his head up and reminding him that he was valued. The principal called a meeting with the student council to discuss the importance of kindness and respect for everyone, regardless of race or background. Despite these efforts, rumors and whispers floated around the hallways. Some students treated Jamal differently. A few avoided him, and others stared. Jamal felt the weight of their eyes on him every day. It was hard to focus on schoolwork when he felt like he was being watched and judged. The kindness he had shown had somehow turned into suspicion in the eyes of many. Meanwhile, social media exploded with opinions. Jamal's cousin, Tasha, posted about the real story behind the incident. She wrote how Jamal had helped Mrs. Cranston fix her porch light and how unfair it was that the police were called on him. The post quickly gained attention, and many people shared it. Comments poured in, some expressing support for Jamal, praising his kindness, while others sided with Mrs. Cranston, saying she had every right to be cautious. the neighborhood was divided. Some people stood up for Jamal, organizing small meetings to talk about racial bias and community trust. Others defended Mrs. Cranston, saying she had the right to protect herself in any way she could. The conversation was heated but necessary. Local news stations picked up the story. Reporters interviewed neighbors and community leaders. Some interviews were supportive of Jamal, highlighting the positive values he showed. Others focused on the fears and concerns of the elderly residents, who sometimes felt unsafe in the changing neighborhood. One day, a reporter came to interview Mrs. Cranston. She was hesitant at first but agreed to speak. In the interview, she said, "I just didn't know his intentions. It's hard to trust strangers these days, especially young men I don't know. I called the police because I felt scared. It's nothing personal." Her voice was soft but firm. She expressed her fears honestly, showing that her actions came from a place of worry, not hate. The interview touched many people. It showed the complicated feelings that many elderly people have in neighborhoods that are changing quickly. Some viewers understood her fear, while others saw it as an example of how racial bias could affect people's judgments. Jamal heard about the interview and felt a mix of emotions. He didn't want Mrs. Cranston to be blamed, but he wished she had trusted him. He understood that fear can sometimes make people act in ways that hurt others, even if that is not their intention. Still, the feeling of being misunderstood weighed heavily on his heart. At school, the conversation about race, fear, and kindness became more open. Teachers started organizing special discussions where students could share their feelings and experiences. Jamal was invited to join a small group that talked about diversity and community respect. He listened to other students' stories and shared his own. One afternoon, Jamal's favorite teacher, Mrs. Ramirez, encouraged him to write about what had happened. She said, "Your story can help others understand what it's like to be judged unfairly. Writing it down might also help you heal." Jamal agreed. He began to write in his notebook, pouring out his feelings about the porch light, the police visit, and how it felt to be seen as a threat when all he wanted was to be kind. Writing was hard, but it was also freeing. He found words he didn't know he had inside him. Back home, Jamal's mother kept reminding him that things would get better. She talked to him about history and how many young people had faced similar struggles before him. "This is part of a bigger story," she said gently. "You're strong, Jamal. Keep being kind, but also keep standing up for yourself." Jamal nodded. He knew she was right. He couldn't let fear stop him from being who he was. But the experience had changed him. He saw the world differently now, more complicated and sometimes unfair. The community began to slowly come together. Some neighbors started organizing neighborhood watches that focused on safety but also on building trust. Others planned community events where people from different backgrounds could meet and get to know each other. Jamal wanted to be part of these efforts, hoping that maybe, in time, things could improve. Despite all the challenges, Jamal never lost his hope. He believed that kindness was powerful, even if it was hard to see at first. He hoped that one day, people would stop fearing each other and start trusting again. This part of Jamal's story shows how one simple act of kindness can ripple through a community in unexpected ways. It reveals how fear and misunderstanding can cause pain, but also how talking and sharing can begin the healing process. Jamal's experience became a spark for conversation and change, even if it was uncomfortable and difficult. As the days passed, Jamal kept writing, kept talking, and kept dreaming of a world where people judged each other by their hearts, not by fear or color. And slowly the light he fixed on that porch seemed to shine a little brighter in the darkness around them. After the incident and the stories that spread around the neighborhood, Jamal's life had changed a lot. The light on Mrs. Cranston's porch was fixed, but something bigger was broken in the community. Trust. Jamal felt this every day as he walked to school, looked at people's faces, and heard whispered conversations. The boy who had once been just a kind helper was now a symbol of something much bigger: fear, misunderstanding, and hope. Jamal tried to live his life normally, but the pressure was always there. Sometimes it was in small moments, like when he saw people crossing the street to avoid walking near him. Other times, it was in bigger moments, like when teachers tried to talk about the event and how it showed problems in the neighborhood. Jamal felt the weight of expectations. Some wanted him to be a hero, others wanted him to be quiet and disappear. At school, a group of students started a project called Light Up the Neighborhood. The idea was to bring the community together by fixing broken things and helping neighbors, just like Jamal had done with Mrs. Cranston's porch light. The project was led by the student council, with support from teachers and community leaders. Jamal was asked to be a part of it. At first, Jamal wasn't sure if he wanted to join. The incident had made him feel tired and hurt. But then he thought about what his mother always told him: kindness is never wasted. If helping Mrs. Cranston could turn into a bigger conversation, maybe he could be part of something good. Jamal agreed to join the project. The first meeting was held in the school library. Students, teachers, and a few community members gathered to share ideas. Jamal listened quietly as people spoke about ways to improve the neighborhood, fix broken streetlights, clean parks, and support each other. One community leader, Mrs. Evans, spoke passionately. She said, "We need to rebuild trust, not just between neighbors, but within ourselves. When we come together to help, to listen, and to understand, we create a stronger community." Jamal felt inspired. This was what he wanted: a community where people didn't judge each other quickly but took time to understand and help. He shared his story at the meeting. He talked about the porch light, the police visit, and how it felt to be misunderstood. His voice was steady but full of emotion. People listened. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked thoughtful. Jamal's honesty helped others see the real feelings behind the headlines and rumors. The meeting ended with a plan to start small, fixing things around the neighborhood and inviting neighbors to events where they could meet and talk. The next few weeks were busy. Jamal and other students worked on painting fences, cleaning up parks, and fixing broken lights. They organized block parties and community dinners where everyone was welcome. Jamal helped set up games for children and even taught some younger kids how to fix simple things like light bulbs and door handles. Slowly, people began to smile more. Neighbors who had once avoided each other started talking. Jamal noticed that Mrs. Cranston came to some of the events too. She didn't speak much, but she smiled when she saw Jamal. One day, she even thanked him again quietly, saying, "You're a good boy." These small moments felt like healing. Jamal realized that kindness and patience were powerful tools. They could change fear into friendship, suspicion into trust. But it wasn't easy. There were still moments when old fears came back. Some neighbors still felt unsure about the changes, and some students still whispered behind Jamal's back. One afternoon, Jamal found a note in his locker. It was anonymous but hurtful. It said things that made Jamal feel angry and sad. He thought about throwing the note away, but instead, he kept it. He showed it to his mother, who held him close and said, "This is why what you're doing is important. Some people are scared of change. They need your kindness more than anyone." Jamal understood then that healing a community wasn't just about fixing things outside. It was about fixing what was inside people's hearts, too. It was a slow, sometimes painful process, but it was worth it. Meanwhile, the local newspaper started following the Light Up the Neighborhood project. Reporters wrote stories about the students' efforts and how they were bringing people together. Jamal was often mentioned as the boy who had started a conversation by simply helping an old woman. This recognition made Jamal feel proud, but also responsible. He knew his story was being told not just to show what he did, but to inspire others to be kind, brave, and patient. He wanted to be a leader, not just for his friends, but for the whole community. One evening, during a community meeting, Jamal spoke in front of a large crowd. His voice was clear and confident. "We all have fears," he said. "But we also have the power to choose kindness over fear. When we help each other, when we listen and understand, we can build a better place for everyone." The room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Jamal's words touched many hearts. People began to see him not just as a boy who had been accused unfairly, but as a young leader with a bright future. At home, Jamal and his mother celebrated quietly. She said, "You're stronger than you know, Jamal. Keep shining your light." Jamal smiled, feeling hopeful. He knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but he was ready. The porch light he fixed was more than just a bulb in a socket. It was a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of kindness to change a community. After all the struggles, misunderstandings, and challenges, Jamal's story was reaching an important moment. The boy who had only wanted to help an old woman fix her porch light had become a symbol of hope and change in his neighborhood. But the journey was far from over. Jamal knew that true change was a long process. It was not something that happened overnight, but something that grew slowly, like a small seed turning into a strong tree. Jamal felt the weight of everything he had been through. The calls from the police, the whispers at school, the headlines in the news. They had all left marks on him. Sometimes late at night he would lie awake thinking about how things could have been different if people had just trusted him from the start. But he also realized that dwelling on what could have been wouldn't help him move forward. He remembered his mother's words, that kindness was never wasted, and that the light he had fixed was a symbol for much more. Jamal believed in that. Light. It reminded him that even when things seem dark and scary, a little brightness can make all the difference. One day, a local community center invited Jamal to speak at an event about youth leadership and community building. Jamal was nervous at first. Speaking in front of a big crowd was not easy, especially after all he had been through. But he practiced with his mother and friends, and when the day came, he was ready. Jamal stood on the stage and looked out at the audience. There were parents, teachers, neighbors, and many young people like him. He took a deep breath and began to speak. He told the story of the porch light, how Mrs. Cranston's light had been broken, and how he had offered to help. He shared what had happened afterward, the police visit, the rumors, and the feeling of being misunderstood. But he didn't just focus on the pain. He talked about how kindness had brought people together, how the community had started to heal through the Light Up the Neighborhood project, and how important it was to keep trying even when things get hard. Jamal's words were simple but powerful. He spoke about hope, courage, and the power of listening to each other. Many in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. They saw not just a boy, but a young leader who was brave enough to stand up and speak the truth. After his speech, many people came up to Jamal to thank him. Some shared their own stories of being misunderstood or judged unfairly. Others asked how they could help make their communities better. Jamal felt proud but humble. He knew he was just one person, but he also knew that one person's actions could inspire many others. Back in his neighborhood, Jamal's relationship with Mrs. Cranston continued to improve. She had become one of his strongest supporters. She often told neighbors about how Jamal had helped her, and how wrong she was to call the police. Her words helped change minds and heal old wounds. One afternoon, Mrs. Cranston invited Jamal and his family to her home for tea. They talked and laughed like old friends. Jamal realized how important it was to give people a chance, even if fear made them act in ways that hurt others. Forgiveness and understanding were part of healing too. Jamal's classmates started seeing him in a new light. Some who had once whispered behind his back now wanted to be friends. Teachers praised his leadership and encouraged other students to follow his example. Jamal worked hard, both in his studies and in helping others, determined to make a difference. As time passed, the Light Up the Neighborhood project grew. More students joined, and more community events were organized. Broken fences were repaired, parks were cleaned, and new friendships were formed. Jamal saw the neighborhood change, not just in appearance but in spirit. People smiled more, talked more, and trusted each other more. But Jamal also knew that challenges would always exist. He knew there would still be fear and misunderstanding sometimes. What mattered was how people responded, with kindness, courage, and a willingness to listen. One evening, as Jamal sat on his porch looking at the light he had fixed years ago, he felt a deep sense of peace. The light shone brightly, just like the hope he carried inside him. He thought about the journey he had been on, the pain, the fear, the kindness, and the courage. Jamal smiled, knowing that his story was not just about fixing a porch light. It was about shining a light in the darkness, about standing up for what is right, and about believing in the power of kindness to change the world. His journey was just beginning, and Jamal was ready to keep shining his light, one small act of kindness at a time.